guys, what's up? I'll just put this in here for you, artsy. There we go. I just threatened my sister. I said, if you don't come in chat and say hi to me, I'm going to be upset. So I'm like, I called her. I was like, say hi. Don't forget to say hi. Say hi. So if you hear me, Melissa, you better be saying hi. Hi, Nancy. There, Lurtsy.
Hello.
Hi. Being mean, bitching at my sister, telling her to tell me, say hello to me in the chat. I don't know if she will.
Say hello to what?
I'm telling my sister, Melissa, I was just talking to her on the phone. I had to hang up on her because I was going live in like 2 seconds. So I hung up. I'm like, but before I did, I kept yelling, say hi, say hi. So I'm trying to make her say hi. I don't know if she will. I don't think she gets this whole live chat thing or anything like that.
Oh.
Yeah. So how you been?
Oh, I've been good.
Are you sure?
No. No, worked a lot this week.
Oh, did you?
Before that, though, went to the lake, did some swimming,
Ooh.
some painting, took some family.
Oh,
Had
that's
some
awesome.
fun.
I've never been sailing. And again, I don't get out much.
Not sailing. We went just swimming. But
sorry. I thought you said sailing.
There's a smaller lake with a boat ramp, so we swim off of the boat ramp, and I like to swim out to the middle of it and just float on my back and look up at the clouds and stuff. It's peaceful.
Yeah, it would be. I'm going to screw up Vincent's name again. I can already tell the way I'm reading it. Bugliosi? I'm wrong, aren't I?
No,
Beausoleil?
actually.
No, that was the other one.
That was Bobby Beausoleil. That was one of the killers.
Yeah, Beausoleil. And this one is
Bugliosi.
Bugliosi. Okay.
Bugliosi.
You know what? I'm going to write that down because I'm good at screwing up. There we go.
You might hear a puppy bark.
Huh?
You might hear a puppy bark in the background.
Oh, that's all right. They're cute.
Half barking at something. Oh, now we found a real reason. Okay. No. I was just hearing like a little oof, oof, under their breath. What? No. Hey. Come here. Sorry, one sec.
Okay.
Come here. Look what I got. You want one? You want your chewy? Yeah. Look what I got. Look at what I got. Want your chewy?
I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, Nancy. Like Paco Topog? I don't know.
Hang on. Take your chewy. There you go. Now you might hear crunching, but hey, it's better than barking.
Yeah, that's true.
Well.
All right, I'm going to start reading. Just going to take a big gulp.
One under the desk, get under the desk.
They're still doing that, eh?
Yeah.
Under the desk. All right, February 1970. Was it pretty good? Poke Topo? Hey, Brittany.
Pokotopog? Poko.
Is it Pog or Pogue?
Pogue.
Pokotopog?
Pogue.
I got the Pokotopog or Pogue. I don't know. She said it was pretty good. Just don't ask me to say Bugliosi.
You did. It was Bugliosi. You did it right. Hi, Brittany.
This is weird. I've never heard of a sentence starting with that. That's weird. Oh, we got it. Oh, yeah. All right, February 1970. That an accused mass murderer could emerge a counterculture hero seemed inconceivable. But to some, Charles Manson had become a cause. Just before she went underground, Bernadine Dorn told a Students for a Democratic Society convention, offing those rich pigs with their own forks and knives, and then eating a meal in the same room, far out. The Weathermen dig Charles Manson. Huh. The underground paper, Tuesday's Child, which called itself the voice of the Yippies, blasted its competitor, the Los Angeles Free Press, for giving too much publicity to Manson, then spread his picture across the entire front page with a banner naming him Man of the Year. Hey, Adele. Oh, it's Pog. Okay. The cover of the next issue had Manson on a cross. Wow. Manson's posters and sweatshirts appeared in psychedelic shops along with free Manson buttons. Gypsy and other spokesmen for the family took to the late-night radio talk show to play Charlie's songs and denounced the prosecution for framing an innocent man. Stretching his privileges to their utmost limits, Manson himself granted a number of interviews to the underground press. He was also interviewed by phone from the county jail by several radio stations. And his visitors list now included, among the material witnesses, some familiar names. I fell in love with Charlie Manson the first time I saw his cherub face and sparkling eyes on TV, exclaimed Jerry Rubin. On a speaking tour during a recess in the Chicago 7 trial, Rubin visited Manson in jail, giving rise to the possibility that Manson might be considering the use of destructive tactics during his own trial. According to Rubin, Charlie rapped for 3 hours, telling him, among other things, Rubin, I am not of your world. I've spent all my life in prison. When I was a child, I was an orphan and too ugly to be adopted. Now I am too beautiful to be set free. I'm sorry. He's odd. Just 1 second. Sorry.
Yeah, odd is a pretty good understatement.
No, I don't know what else to say. I just didn't need to laugh. It just kind of came out. Get out of there. No. Cat's trying to...
One of his many parole hearings, he was asked what he would do if he ever got out of prison. And he thought about it for a second, and then looked right at him and said, I'd go poof. That was his answer. Just have it on tape somewhere. And I was just like, what?
What? His words and courage inspired us, Rubin later wrote. Manson's soul is easy to touch because it lays quite bare on the surface. We Are Everywhere by Jerry Rubin, New York, Carrion Row, 1971. Okay. Yet Charles Manson, revolutionary martyr, was a difficult image to maintain. Rubin admitted being angered by Manson's incredible male chauvinism. A reporter for the Free Press was startled to find Manson both anti-Jewish and anti-Black. And when one interviewer tried to suggest that Manson was as much a political prisoner as Huey Newton, Charlie, obviously perplexed, asked, who's he? As yet, the pro-Mansonites appeared to be a small, though vocal minority. If the press and TV reports were correct, a majority of the young people whom the media had lumped together under the label hippies disavowed Manson. Many stated that the things he espoused, such as violence, were directly contrary to their beliefs, and more than a few were bitter about the guilt by association. It was almost impossible to hitchhike anymore. One youth told a New York Times reporter, if you're young, have a beard, or even long hair, motorists look at you as if you're a crazy cultist and jam the gas. The irony was that Manson never considered himself a hippie, equating their pacifism with weakness. If the family members had to have a label, he told his followers he much preferred calling them slippies, a term which, in the context of their creepy crawly missions, was not inappropriate. What was most frightening was that the family itself was growing. The group at Spawn had increased significantly. Each time Manson made a courtroom appearance, I spotted new faces among the known family members. It could be presumed that many of the new converts were sensation seekers drawn like moths to the glare of the publicity. What we didn't know, however, was how far they would go to gain attention or acceptance. Peace and make love was their motto. Oh, no doubt. What was most frightening was that the family itself was growing. The group at Spawn had increased. I think I just read that. It could be presumed that many of the new converts were sensation seekers drawn like moths. I just read that too. Leslie Van Houten was legally sane. Judge Dell ruled on February 6th, basing his decision on the confidential reports of the 3 psychiatrists and granting her motion for a submission of attorneys. In court the same day, Manson unexpectedly called her bluff. Let's have an early trial setting. Let's go tomorrow or Monday. That's a good day for a trial. Keene set a trial date of March 30th, the date already assigned Susan Atkins. That gave us a little more time, but not nearly enough. On February 16th, Keene and Manson's motion for a change of venue, there was been more publicity on this, even more than the guy who killed the President of the United States, Manson said. It is getting so far out of proportion that to me it is a joke, but actually the joke might cost me my life. Though the other defense attorneys would later submit similar motions, arguing that it would be impossible for their clients to obtain fair trials in Los Angeles because of the extensive pretrial publicity. Manson didn't argue this too strongly. The motion was really trivial. He said because it doesn't seem it could be done anywheres. Though Keene disagreed with Manson's contention that he could obtain a fair trial, he did observe in denying the motion that a change of venue, even if warranted, would be ineffectual. This was also the view of the prosecution. It was doubtful if there was any place in California or the rest of the United States where the publicity had not reached. Each time the defense made a motion, and there would be hundreds before the end of the trial, the prosecution had to be prepared to answer. Though Aaron and I shared the verbal arguments, I prepared the written briefs, many of which required considerable legal research. All of this was in addition to the heavy investigative responsibilities I had taken on. Yet the latter job had its special satisfactions. At the start of February, there were still huge holes in our case, big areas where we had almost no information whatsoever. For example, I still had very little insight into what made Charles Manson tick. By the end of the month, I had that, and a great deal more. For by then I understood for the first time Manson's motive, the reason why he'd orchestrated or ordered these murders. I rarely interview a witness just once. Often the 4th or 5th interview will bring out something previously forgotten or deemed insignificant, which, in proper context, may prove vital to my case. When I had questioned Greg Jacobson before the grand jury, my primary concern had been to establish the link between Manson and Melcher. Hey, Teresa. I'm glad I can help you sleep, Teresa. Re-interviewing the talent scout, I was surprised to discover that since meeting Manson at Dennis Wilson's home in the early summer of 1968, Jacobson had had over 100 long walks with Charlie, mostly about Manson's philosophy. An intelligent young man who flirted off and on with the hippies' lifestyle. Greg had never joined the family, though he'd often visited Manson at Spawn Ranch. Besides seeing in Manson certain commercial possibilities, Jacobson had found him intellectually stimulating. He was so impressed that he often touted him to others, such as Rudy Altobelli, the owner of 10050 Cielo Drive, who had both been Terry Melcher's and Sharon Tate's landlord. I was surprised at the wide variety of people Manson knew. Charlie was a chameleon. Greg said he often professed that he had 1,000 faces and that he used them all. He told me that he had a mask for everyone. Including the jury, I wondered, realizing that if Manson put on the mask of the peace-loving hippie at the trial, I'd be able to use Greg's humor to unmask him. I know, I love you too, Teresa. I asked Greg why Manson felt it necessary to don masks, so he could deal with everyone on their own level, from the ranch hand at Spawn to the girls on the Sunset Strip to me. I was curious as to whether Manson had a real face. Greg thought he had. Underneath it all, he had very firm beliefs. It was rare to find a man who believed in his convictions as strongly as Charlie did, who couldn't be swayed. What were the sources of Manson's belief, I asked. Charlie rarely, if ever, gave anyone else credit for his philosophy, Greg replied. But it was obvious that Charlie was not above borrowing. Had Manson ever mentioned Scientology or the Process? The Process, also known as the Church of the Final Judgment, was a very strange cult. led by one Robert Moore, who, like Manson, was an ex-Scientologist. Its members worshipped both Satan and Christ. I'd only begun to look into the group acting on the basis of a newspaper story which indicated Manson might have been influenced by them. However, Jacobson said Manson had never mentioned either. Sorry, there's a bunch of photos. Scientology or the process. Greg himself had never heard of the latter group. Oh, there she is. My sister. I heard her Wesley's name. Did Charlie ever quote anyone? I asked Greg. Yes, he replied. The Beatles and the Bible. Manson would quote verbatim whole lyrics from the Beatles songs, finding in them a multitude of hidden meanings. As for the Bible, he most often quoted Revelation 9, but in both cases, he usually used the quotations as support for his own views. Though I was very interested in this odd coupling and would later question Greg in depth about it, I wanted to know more about Manson's personal beliefs and attitudes. What did Manson say, if anything, about right and wrong? He believed you could do no wrong, no bad. Everything was good. Whatever you do is what you were supposed to do. You are following your own karma. The philosophy mosaic begins taking shape. The man I was seeking to convict had no moral boundaries. It was not that he was immoral, but totally immoral. And such a person is always dangerous. Did he say it was wrong to kill a human being? He said it was not. What was Manson's philosophy, re death? There was no death. To Charlie's way of thinking, death was only a change. The soul or spirit can't die. That's what we used to argue all the time. The objective and the subjective, and the marriage of the two. He believed it was all in the head, all subjective. He said that death was fear, and that was born in man's head, and can be taken out of man's head, and then it would no longer exist. Huh? I'm confused. Whoa. Death to Charlie, Greg said, was no more important than eating an ice cream cone? Wow. Yet once in the desert, Jacobson had run over a tarantula, and Manson had angrily berated him for it. He had denounced others for killing rattlesnakes, picking flowers, even stepping on a blade of grass. To Manson, it was not wrong to kill a human being, but it was wrong to kill an animal or a plant. Wow, he's got his morals real tight there. Yet he also said that nothing was wrong. Everything that happened was right. That Manson's philosophy was riddled with such contradiction, apparently bothered his followers little, if at all. Manson said that each person should be independent, but the whole family was dependent on him. He said that he couldn't tell anyone else what to do, that they should do what your love tells you. But he also told them, I am your love, and his wants became theirs. I asked Greg about Manson's attitude toward women. I was especially interested in this because of the female defendants. Women had only two purposes in life, Charlie would say, to serve men and to give birth to children. But he didn't permit the girls in the family to raise their own children. If they did, Charlie claimed, they would give them their own hang-ups. Charlie believed that if he could eliminate the bonds created by parents, schools, churches, society, he could develop a strong white race. I'm not sure how to say this, but I'm not sure. I think it's a German word. Who Manson claimed to have bred. Charlie believed in a master race. According to Charlie, Greg continued, women were only as good as their men. They were only a reflection of their men, all the way back to Daddy. A woman was an accumulation of all the men she had been close to. Then why were there so many women in the family, I asked. There were at least 5 girls to every man. It was only through the women, Greg said, that Charlie could attract the men. Men represented power and strength. But he needed the woman to lure the men into the family. As with others I interviewed, I asked Greg for examples of Manson's domination. Greg gave me one of the best I'd yet found. He said he had dinner with the family on 3 occasions. Each time Manson sat alone on the top of a large rock, the other members of the family sitting on the ground in a circle around him. Did Tex Watson ever get up on the rock? No, of course not. Did anyone else in the family get up there? Only Charlie. I needed many, many more examples like this so that when I offered all of them at trial, the jury would be led to the irresistible conclusion that Manson had such a hold over his followers, and specifically his co-defendants, that never in a million years would they have committed these murders without his guidance, directions, and orders. I asked Greg about Charlie's ambitions. Charlie wanted to be a successful recording artist, Greg said. Not so much as a mean to making money as to get his word out to the public. He needed people to live with him, to make love, to liberate the white race. What was Manson's attitude toward blacks? Greg replied that Charlie believed there were different levels when it came to race, and the white man occupied a higher level than the black. This was why Charlie was so strongly opposed to black and white sex. You would be interfering with the path of evolution. You would be mixing up nervous systems, less evolved and more re-evolved. According to Jacobson, Charlie believed that the black man's sole purpose on Earth was to serve the white man. Wow. He was to serve the white man's needs. But Blackie had been on the bottom too long, Charlie said. It was now his turn to take over their reins of power. This is what Helter Skelter, the black-white revolution, was all about. Greg and I would talk about this on more than a half dozen separate occasions. What before had been only fragments, bits and pieces, now began slipping into place. The picture that eventually emerged, however, was so incredibly bizarre as to be almost beyond belief. There's a special feeling you develop over years of interviewing people. When someone is lying or not telling everything he knows, you can often sense it. On re-interviewing Terry Melcher, I became convinced that he was withholding something. There wasn't any time for pussyfooting. I told Terry I wanted to talk to him again, only this time he should have his attorney, Chet Lappin, present. When we met in Lappin's office on the 17th, I put it to him bluntly. You're not leveling with me, Terry. You're keeping something back. Whatever it is, eventually it will come out. It would be far better if he told me about it now rather than have the defense surprise us with it on cross-examination. Right, Brittany? Terry wavered for a few minutes, then decided to tell me. The days after news of Manson's involvement in the Tate murders broke, Terry had received a telephone call from London. The caller was Rudy Altobelli, the owner of 10050 Cielo Drive. Rudy had told him, in confidence, that one day in March 1969, while he was taking a shower in the guest house, Manson had knocked on the door. Manson claimed to be looking for Terry, who had moved out some months before, but Altobelli, who was a successful business manager for a number of theatrical stars, suspected that Manson had actually come looking for him, as Manson had worked the conversation around to his own music and songs. In a rather subtle fashion, Altobelli had made it clear that he wasn't interested, and Manson left. The guest house, Terry, I said. Why didn't you tell me this before? I wasn't sure it was relevant. Christ, Terry, this places Manson inside the gate of the Tate residence. As you well know, to reach the guest house, he'd have to first pass the main house. This means Manson was familiar with the layout of the house and the grounds. I don't know what could be any more relevant. Where's Altobelli now? Cape Town, South Africa, Melcher reluctantly replied. Checking his address book, he gave me the number of the hotel where he was staying. I called Cape Town. Mr. Altobelli had just checked out of the hotel, leaving no forwarding address. However, Terry told me that Rudy was planning to return to Los Angeles for a few days sometime soon. The minute he hits LA, I want to know it, I told him. As a safeguard, I put out few feelers of my own, asking others who knew Altobelli to contact me if they saw or heard from him. The same day I talked to Melcher, half her extradition problems were solved. Patricia Katie Krenwinkel waived further proceedings and asked to be returned to California immediately. When she made her first courtroom appearance on the 24th, she requested Paul Fitzgerald of the Public Defender's Office as her attorney. Fitzgerald told the judge that, barring a possible conflict of interest, his office would be willing to represent her. Actually, there were two possible conflicts of interest. The Public Defender's Office was already representing Beausoleil on the Hinman murder, and Fitzgerald had earlier represented Manson, albeit briefly, before he went in pro per. A month later, Paul Fitzgerald resigned from the Public Defender's Office. After that, office decided that there was indeed a conflict of interest involved. Whether Fitzgerald's motive was purely idealistic or he hoped to make a name for himself in private practice by winning an acquittal for his client, or both, the fact remained that he gave up $25,000 a year salary and a promising career as the public defender to represent Patricia Krenwinkel with virtually no pay. Terry Melcher didn't call, but another of my contacts did, reporting that Rudy Altobelli had returned to Los Angeles the previous day. I called Altobelli's attorney, Barry Hirsch, and arranged a meeting. Before leaving the office, I prepared a subpoena and stuck it in my pocket. Rather than ask Altobelli whether the guest house incident really occurred and risk a possible denial, I simply laid it out. Rudy, the reason I'm here is because I want to ask you about the time Manson came to the guest house. Terry told me about it. Yes, Manson had been there, Rudy said, but did this mean he would have to testify? Rudy Altobelli was a bright, urbane, and as I later discover, at times quite witty man. The roster of entertainment figures he'd represented included such stars as Katharine Hepburn, Henry Fonda, who for a time had rented the guest house at 10050 Cielo Drive, Samantha Egger, Buffy St. Marie, Christopher Jones, and Sally Kellerman. To name only a few, however, in common with almost all the witnesses in this case, he was scared. On his return from Europe following the murders, he found that 100 Cielo Drive had been sealed by the police. Needing a place to stay and unsure whether he might have been one of the intended victims, and still might be, he picked the safest place he could think of. He moved in with Terry Melcher and Candace Bergen, who were occupying a beach house in Malibu owned by Terry's mother, Doris Day. Though Terry and Rudy had spent many hours discussing the murders and possible suspects, Manson's name was never mentioned, Rudy said. When the news broke that Manson had been accused of the murders, a possible motive began being his grudge against Melcher. Altobelli decided that he had probably chosen the least safe place in Southern California. He still shivered when recalling it. He had another reason for fear. In a sense, he too had rejected Manson. Tell me about it, Rudy, I suggested. Then we'll discuss whether you have to testify or not. But first, how do you know it was Manson? Because he'd met Manson once before, Altobelli said, during the summer of 1968 at Dennis Wilson's house. Manson was living there at the time, and Rudy had dropped in while Dennis was playing a tape of Manson's music. He listened politely, commented that it was nice, the minimal courtesy possible, then left. At various times, Dennis and Greg had tried to interest him in Manson and his philosophy. Having worked hard for what money he had, Altobelli said he was not sympathetic to Manson's sponging and had told them exactly that. The incident had occurred about 8 or 9 on the evening of Sunday, March 23rd, 1969. Rudy remembered the date because he and Sharon had flown to Rome together the next day. Rudy on business, Sharon to rejoin her husband and to make a movie there. Rudy was alone in the guest house taking a shower when Christopher started barking. Brittany says, fact, Doris Day was going through financial problems. Grabbing a rope, he went to the door and saw Manson on the porch. While it was possible that Manson had knocked and the shower had muffled the sound, Rudy was irritated that he had opened the outside door and walked into the porch uninvited. Manson started to introduce himself, but Rudy, somewhat brusquely, without opening the screen door, somewhat briskly, without opening the screen door that separated the porch from the living room, said, I know who you are, Charlie. What do you want? Manson said he was looking for Terry Melcher. Altobelli said Terry had moved to Malibu. When Manson asked for his address, Altobelli said he didn't know it, which was not true. Prolonging the conversation, Manson asked him what business he was in. Although Altobelli felt sure Manson already knew the answer, he replied, the entertainment business. He added, I'd like to talk to you longer, Charlie, but I'm leaving the country tomorrow and have to pack. Manson said he would like to talk to him when he returned. Rudy told him that he wouldn't be back for over a year, another untruth, but he had no desire to talk further with Manson. Before Manson left, Rudy asked him why he had come back to the guest house. Manson replied that the people at the main house had sent him back. Altobelli said that he didn't like to have his tenants disturbed, and he would appreciate it if he wouldn't do so in the future. With that, Manson left. Though one question was upmost in my mind, before asking it, I had Altobelli describe Manson, the lighting on the porch, exactly where each was standing. Since he had met Manson on a prior occasion, there was no question that this was a positive identification, but I wanted to be absolutely sure. Then I asked it and held my breath until he answered. Rudy, who was up front that night, Sharon, Gibby, Wojtek, Jay, 4 of the 5 tape victims. This meant that Manson could have seen any or all of them. Prior to my talking to Rudy, we had assumed that Manson had never seen the people he had ordered killed. Rudy thought a moment. He had been up at the main house earlier that evening, actually returning to the guest house only a few moments before Manson arrived. I'm not sure, he said, but I'm almost positive Hatimi was there. Hatimi, a native of Iran, was Sharon's personal photographer, and a good friend of both Polanski's. Hatimi had been at the house that afternoon. Rudy knew photographing Sharon while she was packing for a trip. I don't want to testify, Mr. Bugliosi, Rudy suddenly said. I can't understand that. If there's any way I can avoid it, I won't call you to the stand. But realistically, considering the importance of what you've told me, the odds are that I will have to call you. We discussed the subject at some length before I gave him the subpoena. I then said, tell me about Sharon. In the short time he had known her, Rudy said he had grown very fond of her. She was a beautiful person. Of course she was physically beautiful, but by this he meant something else. She had a kind of warmth and niceness which you sense immediately on meeting her, but which, thus far in her career, no director had ever managed to bring out on the screen. They'd had many long talks. She called 10050 Cielo Drive her love house. Rudy then told me something he said he had never told anyone else. I knew there was no way I could use it in the trial. It was hearsay, and though there are many exceptions to the hearsay rule, this couldn't come in under any of them. On the flight to Rome, Sharon had asked him, "Did that creepy-looking guy come back there yesterday?" So Sharon had seen Manson, the creepy-looking little guy who 4.5 months later would mastermind her murder. Something must have happened to have caused such a strong reaction. A confrontation of some sort. Could it be that Wojciech, who had unpredictable temper, had gotten into an argument with Manson, or that Manson had said something offensive to Sharon and Jay had come to her defense? I called LAPD and told them to find Hatimi. Lieutenant Helder contacted a friend of Colonel Tate's, who in turn located Hatimi. I interviewed him in my office. Very emotionally, the Iranian photographer told me how much he had loved Sharon. Not romantic, but he apologized for his broken English. One human being loving qualities other human being has. I told him I doubted if I could be better expressed. Yes, he once sent someone to the back house one time. He didn't know the date, but it was the day before Sharon left for Europe. It was in the afternoon. He looked at the window and noticed a man walking into the yard, hesitant as if he didn't know where he was going, yet cocky as if he thought he owned the place. His manner irritated Hatimi, and he went out on the porch and asked him what he wanted. I asked Hatimi to describe the man. He said he was short, like Roman Polanski. Polanski was 5'5", Manson 5'2". Late 20s, thin with long hair. What color hair? Dark brown. He didn't have a beard, but looked as if he needed a shave. How could he tell that? He'd walked off the porch onto the stone walk to confront him. They were at most 3 or 4 feet apart. With the exception of age, Manson was 34, but could easily have been mistaken for younger. The description fit. The man said he was looking for someone, mentioning a name Hatimi did not recognize. Could it have been Melcher, I asked. Possible, Hatimi said, but he really couldn't remember. It had meant nothing to him at the time. This is the Polanski residence, Hatimi told him. This is not the place. Maybe the people you want is back there, pointing. Take the back alley. By back alley, Hatimi meant the dirt pathway in front of the residence, which led to the guest house. But, as I'd later argue to the jury, to an American back alley meant a place where there were garbage cans refuse. Manson must have felt that he was being treated like an alley cat. I asked Hatimi, "What tone of voice did you use?" He illustrated, speaking loudly and angrily. Roman was away, Hatimi said, and he felt protective of Sharon. I wasn't happy that he was coming on the property and looking at people he doesn't know. Yeah, he wouldn't like Teresa either, then, Brittany. Her son's mixed. How did the man react? He appeared upset, Hatimi said. He turned and walked away without saying excuse me or anything. Just before this, however, Sharon came to the door and said, "Who is it, Hatimi?" Hatimi told her that a man was looking for someone. Showing Hatimi a diagram of the house and grounds, I had him point to the spots where each was standing. Sharon was on the porch, the man on the walk not more than 6 to 8 feet away, with no obstruction between them. There could be no question that Charles Manson saw Sharon Tate, and she him. Sharon had undoubtedly looked right into the eyes of the man who would order her death. We now had, for the first time, evidence that prior to the murders, Manson had seen one of his victims. Hatimi had remained on the walk, Sharon on the porch, while the man went down the path toward the guest house. According to Hatimi, he came back up the path in a minute or two, no more, and left the premises without saying anything. It was not as abrasive an incident as I was looking for, but, together with Melcher's rejection and Altobelli's subtle put-down, Hatimi's take the back alley was more than sufficient cause for Manson to have strong feelings against 10050 Cielo Drive. 2, not only there were these people obviously establishment, there was establishment in the fields, entertainment, recording, motion pictures, in which Manson had tried to make it and failed. Hey, Queen of Sheba. There was one discrepancy. The time. Hatimi was positive the incident had occurred during the afternoon. Altobelli, however, was equally insistent that it was between 8 and 9 in the evening when Manson appeared on the guest house porch. While it was possible one or the other was confused, the most logical explanation was that Manson had gone to the guest house that afternoon, found no one there. Altobelli was out most of the afternoon making arrangements for his trip, then returned that evening. This was supported by Hatimi's statement that Manson had come back up the path after a minute or two, no more, which hardly left time for his conversation with Altobelli. I had Hatimi look at the photographs of a dozen or so men. He picked out one saying looked like the man, though he couldn't be absolutely sure. It was a photograph of Charles Manson. In interviewing Hatimi, I hadn't mentioned Manson's name. Not until the interview was almost over did Hatimi realize that the man he had spoken to that day might have been the man accused of plotting Sharon's murder. Melcher to Elderberry to Hatimi. If I hadn't suspected that Melcher was withholding something, it was possible that we might never have placed Manson inside the gate of 100 Cielo Drive. A similar chain, which had begun with my discovery of a short notion in the Inyo County files, led me to the missing piece in the motive for both the Tate and LaBianca murders. Finally, nearly 3 months after the first requesting it, I obtained the tape Inyo County Deputy Sheriff Don Ward had made with the two miners, Paul Crockett and Brooks Poston. Ward had interviewed the pair on October 3rd, 1969, at Independence. This was a week before the Barker raid, and nearly a month and a half before the LAPD learned of the Manson family's possible involvement in the Tate-LaBianca murders. Ward's interview had nothing to do with those murders, only the activities of the hippie types, who were now living in Guller Wash. Crockett, a weather-worn miner in his mid-40s, had been prospecting the Death Valley area in the spring of '69 when he came across Manson's advance party at Barker Ranch. At this time, it consisted of only two persons, a young runaway named Juanita Wildbush and Brooks Poster, a slender, rather docile 18-year-old who had been with the family since June 1968. Nights, Crockett would visit the pair, and the talk would invariably turn to one subject, Charlie. And I couldn't believe what they were saying, Crockett observed. I mean, it was so utterly ridiculous. It became obvious to Crockett that these people believed this Charlie to be the second coming of Christ. It was just as obvious that they feared him. And so Crockett, who was no stranger, did something perhaps a little odd, but at least psychologically effective. He told them that, just like Charlie, he too had powers, and I planted them with the idea that I had the power to keep Charlie from coming back up here. Other family members, including Paul Watkins, Tex Watson, Brenda McCann, and Bruce Davis, would occasionally show up at Barker with messages and supplies, and it didn't take long for the word to get back to Manson. Initially, he scoffed at the idea, but each time he tried to go to Barker, something happened. The truck broke down, Spawn Ranch was raided, and so on. Meanwhile, Juanita eloped with Bob Berry, Crockett's partner, and Crockett succeeded in unconverting several of Manson's most important male followers. Poston, Paul Watkins, who often acted as Manson's second in command, and somewhat later, Juan Flynn, a tall, strapping Panamanian cowboy who had worked the Spawn Ranch. When Crockett first met young Poston, he was a zombie. The phase was Poston's own. He said that he had wanted to leave the family many times, but Manson had a wise grip on my mind, and I couldn't break the grip. I didn't know how to leave. Crockett discovered that Manson had programmed all his people to the extent that they're just like him. He has put all kinds of things in their heads. I didn't believe it could be done, but he has done it, and I've seen it working, Crockett began, deprogramming Poston. He put him to work in his various mining ventures, built up his body, got him to thinking of other things than Manson. When Manson finally reached Barker in September 1969, Crockett, meeting him for the first time, found him a very clever man. He borders on genius. Then Manson told him some of the weirdest stories. I thought it was all make-believe to start with. Before long, Crockett was not only convinced that Manson was insane, he was sure he would think no more of killing one of us than he would of stepping on a flower. In fact, he'd rather do that than step on a flower. Deciding that his own life expectancy was directly proportionate to his unusefulness to Manson, Crockett made himself very useful, volunteering his truck to haul in supplies and so forth. He and the former Masonite, now living with him in a small cabin near Barker, also began taking precautions. Among the weird tales Manson had told Crockett, that the black man was getting ready to blow the whole thing open. Charlie has set up the whole thing. It's kind of like a storybook. He says Helter Skelter is coming down. Helter Skelter is what he calls the N revolt, Poston explained. He says the Negroes are going to revolt and kill all the white men except the ones that are hiding in the desert. Long before this, Manson had told Poston, when Helter Skelter comes down, the cities are going to be mass hysteria, and the cops, the piggies, he calls them, won't know what to do, and the beast will fall, and the black man will take over. The Battle of Armageddon will be at hand. Poston told Deputy Ward one of Charlie's basic creeds is that all the girls is to fuck, and that's all they're for. And there's no crime, game of a little kid, only there's no crime. There's no sin. Everything is all right. That it's all just a game, like the game of a little kid, only it's grown-up game. and that God's getting ready to pull down the curtain on this game and start it over again with his chosen people. His chosen people were the family, Charlie said. He would lead them to the desert where they would multiply until they numbered 144,000. He got this, Poston said, from reading things into the Bible from Revelations. Manson apparently got 144,000 figure from Revelation 7, which mentions the 12 tribes of Israel, each numbering 12,000. Also in Revelation, as well as Hopi Indian legends, there was mention of a bottomless pit, Poston said. The entrance to this pit, according to Charlie, was a cave that he says is underneath Death Valley and leads down a sea of gold that the Indians know about. Charlie claimed that every turned-in tribe of people that's ever lived have escaped the destruction of their race by going underground, literally, and they're all living in a golden city where there's a river that runs through it of milk and honey, and a tree that bears 12 kinds of fruit, a different fruit each month, or something like that, and you don't need to bring candles nor any flashlights down there. He says it will be all lit up because the walls will glow, and it won't be cold, and it won't be too hot. There will be warm springs and fresh water, and people are already down there waiting for them. That is, wow. That's a lot. Holy. Both Atkins. What, sorry?
Just a little loopy. Just a
wow.
little bit.
Like, oh my God. Both Atkins and Jacobson had already told me about Charlie's bottomless pit. The family loved to hear Charlie sermonize about this hidden land of milk and honey. They not only believed, they were so convinced that such a place existed that they spent days searching for the hole in the ground, which would lead them to the underground paradise. Oh my gosh. There was also a kind of desperation in the search because it was here underground in the bottom pit that they intended to hide and wait out Helter Skelter. It was obvious to both Crockett and Poston that Manson believed Helter Skelter was imminent, and there were the preparations. Manson had arrived at Barker Ranch in September 1969 with about 8 others, all heavily armed. More family members arrived the following week, driving stolen dune buggies and other vehicles. They began setting up lookout posts and fortifications, hiding caches of guns, gasoline, and supplies. It did not occur to Crockett or Poston, since neither was aware of the family's involvement in the Tate LaBianca murders, that Manson might be fearful of something other than blacks. Manson hadn't given up on Poston, but Crockett's deprogramming had been very effective. Manson was even more upset that Paul Watkins leaving him, since Watkins, a good-looking youth with a way with women, had been Manson's chief procurer of young girls. Crockett, Poston, and Watkins had begun sleeping with their shotguns within reach. On at least 3 occasions, Charlie, Clem, and or the girls tried to creepy crawl the cabin. Each time the trio had been lucky and had heard something aborting the plan. Then one night, Juan Flynn arrived to shoot some bull and admitted Manson had suggested he kill Crockett. Crockett persuaded Juan, who was far too independent to ever join the family, that he should leave the area. Crockett, accustomed to living as free and unencumbered as a mountain goat, was a mite stubborn. He felt he had such a right to be in Death Valley as Manson did, but he was also a realist. With Flynn gone and Watkins in town getting supplies, he and Poston were vastly outnumbered. Figuring my usefulness to Charlie had already vanished and that he would, if he considered it necessary, liquidate me immediately, if not sooner, Crockett had Poston fill the canteens and pack some grub. Under cover of night, they fled the area on foot, walking over 20 rugged miles to Warm Springs, then catching a ride to Independence, where they told Deputy Sheriff Ward about Charles Manson and his family. After hearing the tape, I arranged through Frank Fowles for Crockett and Poston to come to Los Angeles. Though it was Crockett who had broken Manson's hold over the Poston, the latter was by far the most articulate. Incidents, dates, places, snap, snap, snap. Crockett, by contrast, was evasive. I can feel their vibrations. I can't talk freely to you because they might know what I'm saying. This is so screwed up. Holy. Crockett doubted if we would ever convict Manson because he does nothing himself. His people do it all for him. He doesn't do anything anybody could pin on him. He added that all the women have been programmed to do exactly as he says, and they all have knives. He's got those girls so programmed that they don't even exist. They are a copy of him. Though I was interested in Crockett's contacts with Manson and the family, I was hopeful that he could give me something more important. Crockett had helped Poston, Watkins, and Flynn break away from Manson. To do this, he must have gained some insight into how Manson had gained control over them in the first place. Others had also said that Manson programmed his followers. Did he understand how he accomplished this? Crockett said he did, but when he tried to articulate it, he became bogged down in a morass of words and definitions, finally saying, I can't explain it, it's all part of the occult. I decided I wouldn't be able to use Crockett as a witness. It was otherwise with Brooks Poston, the tall, gangly youth, with the air of the hayseed about him, was a fund of information about Manson and the family. A highly impressionable 17-year-old, Brooks Poston had met Manson at Dennis Wilson's house, and from that moment until he finally broke with Manson more than a year later to follow Crockett, I believed Charlie was Jesus Christ. JC? Yeah, that's how Charlie always used to refer to Jesus Christ. Did Manson ever tell you he was JC or Jesus Christ? It wasn't so much stated as implied, Brooks said. Charlie claimed that he had lived before, nearly 2,000 years ago, and that he had once died on the cross. Manson had also told Greg Jacobson that he had already died once and that death is beautiful. Charlie had a favorite story which he was fond of telling the family, complete with dramatic gestures, moans of pain. Brooks had heard it often. According to Charlie, while he was living in Haight-Ashbury, he had taken a magic mushroom trip. He had taken a magic mushroom trip. He was laying on a bed, but it became a cross, and he could feel the nails in his feet, his hands, and the sword on his side. And when he looked down at the foot of the cross, he saw Mary Magdalene, Mary Brunner, and she was crying, and he said, I'm all right, Mary. He had been fighting it, but now he gave up, surrendered himself to death, and when he did, he could suddenly see through the eyes of everyone at the same time, and at that moment he became the whole world. With such clues, his followers had little trouble guessing his true identity. Manson was charged with interfering with the questioning of a suspected runaway juvenile, Ruth Ann Morehouse. He was given 30 days, suspended, and placed on 3 years probation. Asked his occupation when booked, he said he was a minister. Okay. Hold on here. Charlie had always used his real name, Charles Miles Manson. On that occasion, however, and thereafter, he called himself Charles Willis Manson. Had Manson ever said anything about his name? I asked. Crockett and Poston both told me that they heard Manson say very slowly that his name was Charles. Will is man's son, meaning that his will was that of the Son of Man. Although Susan Atkins had emphasized Charlie's surname in talking to Virginia Graham, I hadn't really thought until now how powerful that name was. Manson. It was tailor-made for the infinite being role he was now seeking to portray. But Charlie carried all this yet a step further, Poston said. Manson claimed that the members of the family were the original Christians, reincarnated, and that the Romans had returned as the establishment. It was now time, Manson told his closest followers, for the Romans to have their turn on the cross. Exactly how did Manson program someone? I asked Brooks. He had various techniques, Poston said. With a girl, it would usually start with sex. Charlie might convince a plain girl that she was beautiful, or if she had a father fixation, have her imagine that he was her father. He'd use both techniques with Susan Atkins, or if he felt she was looking for a leader, he might imply that he was Christ. Manson had a talent for sensing and capitalizing on it, a person's hang-ups and or desires. When a man first joined the group, Charlie would usually take him on an LSD trip, ostensibly to open his mind. Then, while he was a highly stressful state, he would talk about love, how you had to surrender yourself to it, how only by ceasing to exist as an individual ego could you become one with all things. As with Jacobson, I queried Poston as to the sources of Manson's philosophy, Scientology, the Bible, and the Beatles. These were the only ones he knew. Yet by now I was beginning to suspect the existence of at least a fourth influence. The old magazines I found at Barker. Greg's mentioned that Charlie claimed to have read Nietzsche. I'm not sure how to say that. And that he believed a master race, plus the emergence of a startling number of disturbing parallels between Manson and the leader of the Third Reich, led me to ask Poston, did Manson ever say anything about Hitler? Poston's reply was short and incredibly chilling. He said that Hitler was a tuned-in guy who had leveled the karma of the Jews. I spent most of 2 days interviewing Crockett and Poston, obtaining much new information. Some of it was very incriminating. For example, Manson had once suggested Poston take a knife, go into Shoshone, and kill the sheriff. In the first real test of his newly found independence, Poston had refused to even consider the idea. Before Crockett and Poston returned to Shoshone, I told them I wanted to talk to Juan Flynn and Paul Watkins. They weren't sure if Juan would talk to me. That big Panamanian cowboy was an independent cuss. but they thought Paul might. Since he was no longer procuring girls for Charlie, he had some free time on his hands. Watkins agreed to the interview, and I arranged for Watkins, Poston, and Crockett to stay in a motel in downtown LA. Paul, I need a new love. Paul Watkins was describing for me how Manson would send him out to recruit young girls. Watkins admitted that he liked his special role in the family. The only problem was, after he located a likely candidate, Charlie would insist on sleeping with her first. Why didn't Manson pick up the girls himself, I asked. He was too old for most of the girls, the 19-year-old Watkins replied. He frightened them. Also, I had a good line. It was also obvious that Watkins was better looking than Charlie. I asked Paul where he found the girls. He might go down to the Sunset Strip where the teeny boppers hung out, or drive the highways watching for girls who were hitchhiking. Once Charlie, though the convenience of an older woman who posed as Watkins' mother, even had him arrange a phony registration at a Los Angeles high school so he could be closer to the action. Watkins also described the orgies that took place at the Gresham Street house and at Spawn. For a while, there was one about every week. They would always start with drugs, grass, peyote, LSD, whatever was available, Manson rationing them out, deciding how much each person needed. Everything was done at Charlie's direction, Paul said. Charlie might dance around, everyone else following like a train. As he'd take off his clothes, all the rest would take off their clothes. Then, when everyone was naked, they'd lie on the floor and they'd play the game of taking 12 deep breaths and releasing them and close eyes and then rub against each other until eventually all were touching. Charlie would direct the orgy, arranging bodies, combinations, and positions. He'd set it all up in a beautiful way like he was creating a masterpiece in sculpture, Watkins said. But instead of clay, he was using warm bodies. Paul said that the usual objective during the orgies was for all the family members to achieve a simultaneous orgasm, but they were never successful. Manson often staged these events to impress outsiders. If there were guests who he felt could be of some use to him, he'd say to the family, let's get together and show these people how to make love. Whatever their reaction, the impression was a lasting one. It was like the devil buying your soul, Watkins said. Manson also used these occasions to eradicate hang-ups. If a person indicated reluctance to engage in a certain act, Manson would force that person to commit it. Male, female, 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 male, male, intercourse. Fellatio, sodomy, there would be no inhibitions of any kind. One 13-year-old girl's initiation into the family consisted of her being sodomized by Manson while the others watched. Manson also went down on a young boy to show the others he had rid himself of all inhibitions. Charlie used sex, Paul said, for example, when it became obvious that DiCarlo was making no effort to persuade his motorcycle gang to join the family. Manson told the girls to withhold their favors from Danny. The fact that Manson directed even the sex lives of his followers was powerful evidence of his domination. I asked Watkins for other examples, specifically involving co-defendants. He recalled that once at Spawn Ranch, Charlie told Sadie, I'd like half a coconut, even if you have to go to Rio de Janeiro to get it. Sadie got right up and was on her way out the door when Charlie said, never mind. It was a test. It was also by inference. Evidence that Susan Atkins would do anything Charles Manson asked her to do. It's very creepy. Yeah, Brittany. Sorry, trigger warning, guys. As with the others, I questioned Watkins about Manson's programming techniques. He told me something very interesting, which apparently the other family members didn't know. He said that when Manson passed out the LSD, he always took a smaller dose than the others, though Manson never told him why he did so. Paul presumed that during the trip, Manson wanted to retain control over his own mental faculties. It is said that LSD is a mind-altering drug, which tends to make the person ingesting it a little more vulnerable and susceptible to the influence of third parties. Manson used LSD trips, Paul said, to instill his philosophies, exploit weaknesses and fears, and extract promises and agreements from his followers. As Manson's second in command, Watkins had enjoyed Charlie's confidence more than most of the others. I asked him if Manson had ever mentioned Scientology or the process. Watkins had never heard of the process, but Manson had told him that while he was in prison, he had studied Scientology, becoming a theta, which Manson defined as being clear. Watkins said that in the summer of '68, he and Charlie had dropped into a church of Scientology in downtown Los Angeles. When Manson asked the receptionist, "What do you do after clear?" When she was unable to tell him anything he hadn't already done, Manson walked out. One aspect of Manson's philosophy especially puzzled me, his strange attitude toward fear. He not only preached that fear was beautiful, he often told the family that he should live in constant state of fear. What did he mean by that? I asked Paul. To Charlie, fear was the same thing as awareness, Watkins said. The more fear you have, the more awareness, hence the more love. When you're really afraid, you come to now. And when you are at now, you are totally conscious. That is so screwed up. Manson claimed that the children were more aware than adults because they were naturally afraid. But animals were even more aware than people, he said, because they always lived at now. Wow. The coyote was the most aware creature there was, Manson maintained, because he was completely paranoid. Being frightened of everything, he missed nothing. Charlie was always selling fear, Watkins continued. He wanted people to be afraid, and the more afraid, the better. Using the same logic, Charlie said that death was beautiful because people feared death. I would learn from talking to other family members that Manson would seek out each individual's greatest fear, not so the person could confront and eliminate it, but so he could re-emphasize it. It was like a magic button, which he could push at will to control that person. Whatever you do, Watkins advised me, as had both Crockett and Poston, don't ever let Charlie know you are afraid of him. One day at Spawn, without warning or provocation, Manson had jumped on Watkins and started strangling him. Wow. At first, Paul resisted, but then, gasping for breath, he suddenly gave up, stopped resisting. It was really weird, Watkins said. The instant I stopped fearing him, his hands flew off my throat, and he jumped back as if he'd been attacked by an unseen force. Then it's like the barking dog, I commented. If you show fear, it will attack. If you don't, it won't. Exactly. Fear turns Charlie on. I think he had mental health issues too. Like, I don't know. He's got a lot wrong with him, that's for sure. Paul Watkins was inherently more independent than Brooks Poston, much less the follower type. Yet he too had remained with the family for a long period. Other than the girls, was there some reason why he stayed? I thought Charlie was Christ, he told me, not blinking an eye. Both Watkins and Poston had severed the umbilical cord linking them to Manson, but both admitted to me that they still weren't completely free of him, that even now they would sometimes lapse back into a state where they could feel Manson's vibrations. It was Paul Watkins who finally supplied the missing link in Manson's motive for the murders. Yet, if I hadn't talked to Jacobson and Poston, I might have missed its importance, for it was from all three, Greg, Brooks, and Paul, that I obtained the keys to understanding Charles Manson's unique interpretation of the Book of Revelation, and two, his decidedly curious and complex attitude toward the English musical group the Beatles. Several persons had told me Manson was fond of quoting from the Bible, particularly the 9th chapter of Revelation. Once Charlie had handed Jacobson a Bible, already open to the chapter, and, while he read it, supplied his own interpretation of the verses, with only one exception, which will be noted. What Greg told me tallied with what I later heard from Poston and Watkins. The four angels were the Beatles, whom Manson considered leaders, spokesmen, and prophets, according to Greg. The line, as he opened the bottomless pit, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, was still another reference to the English group, Greg said. Locusts, Beatles, one and the same. Their faces were as the faces of men, yet they had hair as the hair of women, an obvious reference to the long-haired musicians. Out of the mouths of the four angels issued fire and brimstone, issued fire and brimstone. Greg, this referred to the spoken words, the lyrics of the Beatles songs, the power that came out of their mouths. Their breastplates of iron, Poston added, were their electric guitars. Their shapes like onto horses prepared into battle were the doom buggies, the horsemen who numbered 200,000, and who would roam the earth spreading destruction were the motorcyclists. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. I wondered about that seal on the forehead. How did Manson interpret that? I asked Jacobson. It was all subjective, Greg replied. He said there would be a mark on people. Charlie had never told him exactly what the mark would be, but that Charlie, would be able to tell, he would know, and that the mark would just designate whether they were with him or against him. With Charlie, it was either one or the other, Greg said. There was no middle road. One verse spoke of worshiping demons and idols of gold and silver and bronze. Manson said that referred to the material worship of the establishment, of automobiles, houses, money. Directing your attention to verse 15, which reads, and the four angels were loosed which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men, did he say what that meant. He said that those were the people who would die in Helter Skelter, 1/3 of mankind, the white race. I now knew I was on the right track. Only on point did Jacobson's recollection of Manson's interpretations differ from that of the others. The first verse of Revelation 9 refers to a fifth angel. The chapter ends, however, referring to only 4. Originally, there were 5 Beatles, Gray explained, one of whom, Stuart Sutcliffe, had died in Germany in 1962. Fawcett and Watkins, who, unlike Jacobson, were members of the family, interpreted this much differently. Verse I reads, "And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto earth. And to him was given the key of the bottomless pit." To members of the family, the identity of that fifth angel, the ruler of the bottomless pit, was never in doubt. It was Charlie. Verse 2 reads, "And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name is the Hebrew tongue in Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon." The king also had a Latin name, which, though it appears in the Catholic Douay version, was inadvertently omitted by the translators of the King James Version. It was Exterminians, Charles Manson. As far as Jacobson, Watkinson, and Poston knew, Manson placed no special meaning on the last verse of Revelation 9, but I found myself thinking of it often in the months ahead. Neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. The important thing to remember about Revelation 9, Greg told me, is that Charlie believed this was happening now, not in the future. It's going to begin now, and it's time to choose sides. Either that or flee with him to the desert. According to Jacobson, Manson believed the Beatles were spokesmen. They were speaking to Charlie through their songs, letting him know from across the ocean that this is what was going to go down. He believed this firmly. He considered their songs prophecy, especially the song and the so-called White Album. He told me that many, many times. Watkins and Poston also said that Manson and the family were convinced that the Beatles are speaking to Charlie through their music. For example, in the song "I Will" are the lines, "And when at last I find you, your song will fill the air. Sing it loud so I can hear you, make it easy to be near you." Charlie interpreted this to mean the Beatles wanted him to make an album. Poston and Watkins said Charlie told them that the Beatles were looking for JC, and he was the JC they were looking for. He also told them that the Beatles knew that Christ had returned to Earth again and that he was living somewhere in Los Angeles. How in the world did he come up with that, I asked them. In the White Album is a song called Honey Pie, a lyric of which reads, "Oh, honey pie, my position is tragic. Come and show me the magic of your Hollywood song." A later lyric goes, "Oh, honey pie, you are driving me frantic. Sail across the Atlantic to be where you belong." Charlie, of course, wanted them to sail across the Atlantic to join him in Death Valley. While residing in the Gresham Street house in January and February of 1969, just after the White Album was released, Manson and the girls sent several telegrams, wrote a number of letters, and made at least 3 telephone calls to England, attempting to reach the Beatles. No luck. The line, "I'm in love, but I'm lazy" from Honey Pie meant to Charlie that the Beatles loved JC, but were too lazy to go looking for him. Also, they'd just gone all the way to India, following a man who they finally decided was a false prophet, the Maharishi. They were also calling for JC/Charlie in the first 8 lines of the song, "Don't Pass Me By" in Your Blues, and in the earlier Magical Mystery Tour album in Blue Jay Way. Much of this I would never use at the trial. It was simply too absurd. You think? Oh my God. The Beatles' White Album, Manson told Watkins, Poston, and others, set up things for the revolution. His album, which was to follow, would, in Charlie's words, blow the cork off the bottle that would start it. Most of the time at the Gresham Street house, according to Poston, Watkins, and others, was spent composing songs for Charlie's album. Each was to be a message song directed to a particular group of people, such as bikers, outlining the part they'd play in Helter Skelter. Charlie worked hard on these songs. They had to be very subtle, he said, like the Beatles' own songs, their true meaning hidden beneath the awareness of all but the tuned-in people. Manson was counting on Terry Melcher to produce this album. According to numerous family members, both Melcher and Jacobson denied this. Terry had promised to come and listen to the songs one evening. The girls cleaned the house, baked cookies, rolled joints. Melcher didn't show. Manson, according to Poston and Watkins, never forgave Terry for this. Melcher's word was no good, he said angrily on a number of occasions. Though the Beatles had made many records, it was the double-disc White Album, which Capitol issued in December 1968, that Manson considered most important. Even the fact that the cover was white, with no other design except the embossed name of the group, held significance to him. It was and remains a startling album, containing some of the Beatles' finest music and some of their strangest. Its 30 songs range from tender love ballads to pop parodies to cacophonies of noise made by taking loops of very diverse tapes and splicing them together. To Charles Manson, however, it was prophecy. At least, this is what he convinced his followers. That Charlie had renamed Susan Atkins Sadie Mae Glutz long before the White Album appeared, containing the song Sexy Sadie, was additional proof to the family that Manson and the Beatles were mutually attuned. Almost every song in the album had a hidden meaning, which Manson interpreted for his followers. To Charlie, Rocky Raccoon meant coon or the black man. While to everyone except Manson and the family, it was obvious that the lyrics of Happiness is a Warm Gun had sexual connotations. Charlie interpreted the song to mean that the Beatles were telling Blackie to get guns and fight Whitey. Wow. According to Poston and Watkins, the family played 5 songs in the White Album more than all the others. They were Blackbird, Piggies, Revolution 1, Revolution 9, and Helter Skelter. Blackbird singing in the dead of night, take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to rise. Went the lyrics of Blackbird. According to Jacobson, Charlie believed that the moment was now and that the black man was going to arise, overthrow the white man, and take his turn. According to Watkins, in this song, Charlie figured the Beatles were programming the black people to get it up, get it on, start doing it. On first hearing the song, I thought the La Bianca Killers had made a mistake, writing rise instead of our rise. However, Jacobson told me that Charlie said the black man was going to rise up against the white man. Rise was one of Charlie's big words, Greg said, providing me with the origin of still another of the keywords. Both the Tate and the La Bianca murders had occurred in the dead of the night. However, if the parallel had special significance to Manson, he never admitted it to anyone I interviewed, nor, if he knew it, did he admit the dictionary meaning of the phrase Helter Skelter. The song Helter Skelter begins. When I get to the bottom, I go back to the top of the slide, where I stop and I turn and I go for a ride. According to Poston, Manson said this was a reference to the family emerging from the bottomless pit. There was a simpler explanation. In England, home of the Beatles, Helter Skelter is another name for a slide in an amusement park. If you listen closely, you can hear grunts and oinks in the background of the song Piggies. Unlike ex-Beatles, John Lennon and Paul McCartney, George Harrison refused the author's permission to quote from the lyrics of any of his songs, including Piggies. By Piggies, Greg and the others told me, Manson meant anyone who belonged to the establishment. Like Manson himself, the song was openly critical of the Piggies, noting that what they really needed was a damn good whacking. By that he meant the black man was going to give the Piggies, the establishment, a damn good whacking, Jacobson explained. Charlie really loved that line. Both Watkins and Poston said he was always quoting it. I couldn't listen to the final stanza without visualizing what had happened at 3301 Waverly Drive. It describes piggy couples dining out in all their starch finery, eating bacon with their forks and knives. Rosemary LaBianca, 41 knife wounds. Lino LaBianca, 12 knife wounds, punctured with a fork 7 times, a knife in his throat, a fork in his stomach, and on the wall in his own blood, death to pigs. There's a chord at the end of the song, Piggies, Watkins said. It goes down, and it's a really weird chord, after the sound of piggies snorting. And in the Revolution 9 song, there's that same chord, and after it, they have a little pause and snort, snort, snort. But in the pause, there is a machine gun fire. And it's the same thing with the Helter Skelter song, Paul continued. They had this really weird chord, and in the Revolution 9 song, there's the same chord again, with machine guns firing and people dying and screaming and stuff. The White Album contains 2 songs with the word revolution in their titles. The printed lyrics of Revolution 1, as given on the jacket insert, read, "You say you want a revolution. Well, you know, we all want to change the world. But when you talk about destruction, don't you know that you can count me out?" When you listen to the record itself, however, immediately after out, you hear the word in. Manson took this to mean the Beatles, once undecided, now favored revolution. Manson made much of these hidden lyrics, which can be found in a number of the Beatles' songs, but are especially prevalent in the White Album. They were, he told his followers, their direct communications to him, Charlie, JC. Okay, I see how long this. Oh, yeah, this is a very long chapter. Okay, I'm just going to stop right there for now. Oh, I need a break. Holy, that is insane. I've never read this book before, and I didn't, like, there's some things I didn't know a lot of. Like, I think everyone pretty much knows the Manson story with the murders and everything, but to hear the inside stuff, I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot of crazy.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was that. Like, I mean, I know there's cults and stuff, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to giggle, but it was just so far out there. I just couldn't help it.
It's odd, yeah.
It's so bizarre. It's so screwed up. It was like, I've never heard anything like that. And see, that's why I've never read the Bible, and that's why I wouldn't read the Bible, because it was so screwed up to me. Well, if this is worse, I think I'll read the Bible. I mean, oh my God, I've never heard of anything like that in my life, ever. That chop there is very, very long. Like the longest one in here. There's still, holy crap, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, there's still like 20 pages plus. That's crazy.
Yeah, I grew up a Christian and, you know, did all sorts of, you know, Bible studies and stuff growing up, and, you know, youth groups and whatever. And one thing that they did teach us was, you know, there's a phrase, you know, there's no greater lie than the truth slightly distorted.
Oh, okay.
And it kind of fits in with a lot of situations. Like, this is a definite extreme example.
Oh, yeah.
One thing, sorry, I've got a neighbor also, if you hear power tools.
Again? Oh my gosh.
It's only been going on for 3 years. So,
oh, wow.
But yeah, I kind of took that reference in when I was reading the book for the first time, and it's true really for any cult. They like to pick and choose little bits of the Bible, and then you have some of his followers who also like grew up Christian.
Yeah.
And he's referencing something that they consider true. And that's kind of a go-to for a lot of cults.
It's just, well, I've never been in a cult, which I'm assuming you haven't, and a lot of people here haven't. So to hear what actually makes a cult, that is crazy. Like, you literally have to be deprogrammed. Because
I've never been in a cult either. I don't.
No, that's what I mean. You haven't. I haven't. I'm assuming you haven't either, and probably no one in this chat. But the amount of, this is why they have to be deprogrammed. It's insane to me how you can follow the lead on this, and that's insane. The brainwashing that goes into this sort of stuff. You know, you hear about cults, you watch the documentaries, but when you actually hear the words of what's being said in that cult, that's scary for people to believe it too. It's insane to me.
Dave, if I find the clip, I will I'll give it to you, but it would take, I wouldn't be able to find it tonight. But there was a show on the Manson family that my mom had interviewed for, and they went into the science behind groupthink.
Groupthink?
Groupthink.
Okay.
It's really interesting to look up, and when they were talking about it, they had a group of people for test subjects sitting around a table, and they would hold up a piece of paper that had just three lines on it, different lengths, A, B, and C, just almost like a bar graph. And the test subject thought he was there with everybody else. Also, hold on, I'm going to close this window. That is a lot of power tools. But there was really only one test subject, and he thought he was in there with a whole group of them. And, you know, they'd ask a simple question, which line is longer? And there was like an obvious answer, like A is so much longer than the other two. They would go around the room making the test subject guy go last. and they would purposely say the wrong answer, and they would film this guy's reaction, and you could see like the inner struggle.
Yeah.
And eventually, and he'd be like, no, it's C or it's B, whichever it was. And then, they kept doing it, and eventually he kind of caved that, he would cave and just agree with the group. And so there's a whole kind of science behind it that's pretty interesting. It's worth looking into.
Yeah, because you have to know like exactly like what you're doing, and yeah, that's a good take on it. So it's something like that to tell. Yeah, actually, that's a good example.
It's, if you're completely isolated and you are highly outnumbered, to think differently would, especially if they're talking about killing.
Yeah.
You're going to keep quiet on thinking different. That's for sure. I think anybody there it sounds like they were still scared even after they were in jail. They were still scared of him.
Yeah, I agree with that. And he could say things from wherever he is, just certain words and whatnot, and they do what he says. Like, how many times did they fire their lawyer just because of one word he would say?
Oh yeah.
I don't know why the courts would allow that, or do they have to allow it?
I think they have to. Yeah.
Wow.
If it's what the other defendants want, and they want whatever, they wanted whatever Charlie wanted.
I didn't realize that Charlie was representing himself. He was his own lawyer, but I should have figured. He's very narcissistic.
Yeah, and he wasn't like just a racist. And when I say just, I don't mean to like downplay that in any way.
Mm-hmm.
He was literally every type of ist that there could be. Very much a sexist too. Hated women.
Yeah. Is he racist though? Because I got like what I don't like this whole rise of the black people against the whites. Like, so was he? I don't understand that still. So is that?
It was all. He was trying to basically jumpstart the race war. That's what Helter Skelter was. He thought there's going to be a war between black people and white people, and the black people are going to win. But then
so he wanted them to win. That's like,
he wanted them so their like thinking behind it was black people would win, and then because they were however they thought, like subhuman, I guess is what they were calling them, or that basically once they've won, they would realize, we can't govern ourselves, and so then they would give control and power over the family that had been in this pit and survived everything.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah. So really, Helter Skelter was basically Manson's way of ruling the world.
Yeah, he wanted to be God. That's what it sounds like.
I believe the sexist part stems from his mother abandoning him. Yeah, it could have come from a lot, but yeah, that his mother definitely did not help.
No, well, she was like a prostitute and sold him off and everything else. Like, he witnessed all the sex and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that does a number on you. That happened to a serial killer named Bobby Joe Long. And he hates women, and that's all he killed. Yeah. Because the same thing.
People blindly believe. Yeah, it was very strange. And that was one thing that made this case like such headlines, is when they were meeting the other defendants and seeing his family, his other, members of the family. The people that followed him came from, like, I guess you would call normal, middle class backgrounds.
Well off.
That was one of the fears, is like, this could happen to anybody's daughter. This could happen to, I will say for the most part in this, and, and I don't want to bash any families or expose anybody, but a lot of the people that joined had reasons that made how awful it was towards the end. It made, it was still a better choice for them than going home. A lot of them had reasons not to want to be at home. Mm-hmm. And then many of them had already had been traveling and joined other communes before joining the family. So there is a big mix of followers.
Well, it was at the times too, right? Like that's what I'm assuming everybody thought that was a commune.
Yeah, well, at that time, there's literally hundreds of them. There were hundreds of other communes in California. And you had the riots in in Los Angeles. You had the Vietnam War. It really did feel in the surroundings that the world was going to hell. Like this could be it. And it fed off of what was going on during that era.
Yeah, exactly. It was like it was with the times, right? So that's what everybody was doing. Yeah, exactly. Most were middle class households. Yeah, the times were so different. Yep, exactly. But
it
to be that screwed up, for him to be that messed up, like he must be. I almost want to say he must have been brilliant, high IQ and everything, to be able to mastermind that. To say those things, like I don't know. He had a high IQ, didn't he?
He, for the most, a little bit. I don't think it was like super high.
Yeah.
But he was very, very
intelligent.
Good at reading people.
Yeah.
Reading what they needed, or like they said, lover, father, brother, leader,
Yeah.
He would be to those people.
And he'd figure out your fears really quick, and then he would use that against you. Like, wow. He was incredibly intelligent. Yeah, I believe it. You got to be able to.
Some ways, yes. Some ways, not so much. But
yeah.
Excuse me. Oh, I was going to say something else there. Totally lost my train of thought. Sorry. But yeah, just kind of going back to the times too. There's things that we're reading about in this book that sounds super odd that was completely normal, and it was the communes. Hitchhiking was popular. Everybody was outside. The whole free love movement, or it's definitely hippie era.
Yeah.
And another thing too is that one thing that my mom was kind of explaining to me when I was asking her questions when she was still alive about this was that when she was first there, it wasn't quite that bam, here's all the info, this is super scary, this is it slowly became that slowly over time.
Yeah,
it slowly went darker, and I think that's what it a little bit was fed at a time, and then the group believed and kind of turned on it, and then a little bit more, and take a step further, a step darker. It was a slow process to get to what happened.
Yeah,
it was. I don't think many people would have stayed that did if it was all of a sudden all at once.
Exactly.
I'm going to just keep hitchhiking and find some other other place to live. No,
he's not going to announce. You guys are going to do this. You're going to murder them. Blah blah blah. Yeah, I totally agree with that because he weaned it in slowly and obviously did a good job because they completely believed everything he said.
Yeah, and there were quite a few people that had been with him for years.
Yeah. Yeah, spoon-fed. Exactly. Then you're right, like with the lines, when you're told something so much and you might as well believe it, I guess, like kind of have no choice if you're living with the family and whatnot. You either respect the beliefs and go by what they say or they're out. And I guess that would be scary too if you already ran away you're a runaway.
Yeah, and it wasn't a simple, if you don't like it, leave. It's if you don't like it, you're dead.
Yeah. And the drugs too, exactly. Manson really studied that book, How to Make Friends and Influence People, made him a master manipulator. Oh, wow.
The music thing didn't help much. Have you ever listened to the Beatles, the White Album?
I don't think I have. I was more Yellow Submarine and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm kind of wanting just to see what the hype is about it with him.
It's interesting. It's definitely not, I would say, my taste in music, but having read this book and basically had it influence personally my family the way it did.
Yeah.
I've listened to bits of it, and it kind of does put you into that time of that era a little bit. But yeah, it's an interesting album.
I think I'm gonna listen to it just because like I'm reading the book and I want to hear what Manson's hearing. It's probably not the same thing, but you know, with the oinking, and then it will have the one word in this part, and then it's the chord at the end or over on this side. Like it was so he was so meticulous about pointing these things out that he thought they were signs for him from the Beatles. Just crazy. The Beach Boys wouldn't sign him, and he blamed Terry Melcher, which is Doris Day's son. Yes, yeah.
Yep, and that's how they ended up at the Cielo Drive. That was Melcher's location. So they do, and I'm sure I said this like towards the, when you first started reading the book or whatever, that, a lot of these victims, they were considered random, but the locations were always in a place where Manson had at some point heard the word no, and he targeted that house, and it didn't matter who was there. It was more the location. He didn't care who was there, how many, or what. Whoever was there was going to die.
Oh, because he was told no. Well, that and Helter Skelter, yeah. But because he was told no, he went back to the house, and that's why. Because he was pissed off at Terry, right?
Well, like you had just read a little bit ago, he did actually see Sharon Tate at that house. And one comment that he did make when he was sending the killers was, go to Melcher's old place. They have movie stars living there now. So he knew,
he knew
who Sharon Tate was. Exactly, Melissa.
Yeah, it used to be Terry's house. And he knew that by reading the book and stuff. He knew that Terry wasn't there anymore and that Sharon was living there now. And because he got a no from that household, that was why he struck it.
Or that's he basically had anger towards in that direction.
Yeah.
That the house was in his mind for it to be picked. And one thing that did kind of help in my mom's favor was she wasn't one of the people that had stayed there for years and years and had kind of slowly seen the downfall. She, when she joined, it was April, I believe it was April 1st of 1969. And so the murders had occurred in that August. So she was there for roughly, 6 months, 5 months, but it was actually less than that because she did leave them for a couple months because she was hitchhiking in Texas with her boyfriend. And so she came back just before the murders occurred. And so she kind of missed a little bit of what I'd call like that slope into the darker side. She could see more clearly, this isn't what it used to be.
Yeah. So when she left, she came back, it was probably completely different. Exactly. And it would have been darker. And that's when she'd be like, oh, okay, I'm out. Like when she arrived, it would have been all happy and fun. And you know what I mean? It was like that, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Like it was great. And then when she left and came back, it was 100% different. It was all dark.
Yeah, well, she had already heard about, Helter Skelter and this theory. And, and if you're surrounded with all that chaos that's going on in the world at that point, and you're 17 years old and you're listening to people who are older, you're like, I asked her, did you believe all of this? Did you? And she's like, I just figured, they were older and they knew something I didn't. But at the same, that family was like living in, layers of an onion. My mom was there and could see a lot of, comments and stuff that they made, but she was not in the core.
Yeah.
And when she finally found out that, oh my gosh, this isn't just a story that they're telling, or this, I'm around the actual killers. She knew that if they found out that she knew, she was dead.
And that is so scary. Wow. Yeah, I would have ran like crazy. Pretend I didn't know anything.
Indoctrinate. Yep. Very much so. But I'll get into a little bit more of how she found out and how she got away towards the end here.
Yeah. I gotta read this long ass chapter first with all the hoopla and how he's JC and stuff. Oh my god. Hi, support your troops and athletes. Oops. You still like that pickle thing?
Yeah, that pickle with peanut butter is actually pretty good.
So I'd used a kosher?
Yeah, just a regular like kosher dill pickle.
I don't like it. But I used a garlic baby dill pickle with crunchy peanut butter. It was just, nah.
I've also liked a lot of weird stuff. Like one of my go-to like snacks was saltine crackers with ketchup on them.
Oh, okay. I like it, yeah, and that's why I don't. I mean, I like a lot of things, but mixed in that, actually, I put butter on my saltine crackers. Not all the time, but I have. I don't know. I've always liked it as a snack. Maybe that's weird.
No.
Anyone seen the movie with Steve Railsback? So creepy. I don't think so. Yeah, I agree, Nancy. I can't tell you how many times we've read the book. Oh, yeah. This is my first time reading it. I mean, I've watched a ton of movies, but you can never beat the book. The book is always the best. And Artsy was telling me, get this one. Read this one.
You can get it on Audible. I have it on Audible. I've listened to it.
Yeah.
On Audible.
It's free too, isn't it? I'm pretty sure it is.
I don't know. Audible's, I have a subscription.
Oh, okay.
But I do think if you sign up, you do get some sort of deal, and they do have.
Yeah, it's like a free month, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know what it was. Oh, hello, little man. Does anybody have any questions or anything for Artsy? It's the best book, absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's many others apparently, but he was the actual prosecutor, right? And he knows your mom. You talk with your mom. You've got a signed book by Vincent and everything, Bugliosi. So that's why you suggested read this one. It was the most
it's most accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has since passed as well, but I did get to meet him. He was a very nice guy.
Oh, that's awesome.
I remember he called my mother a kiddo, and I just thought that was just so weird. Because
I usually call people older than me kiddo. I don't know. I used to do it all the time. I haven't done it in a while because I guess COVID, I don't get out much, but I've done that. They're like, kiddo? I could be your grandfather. I don't know. It's like it's just, I don't know. It's something I've done too.
Yeah, I think it was, I was either late teens, early 20s when I met him. I can't remember exactly what year. But, I had to kind of think, I was like, well, when he did meet her, she was 17. I was like, but it was, I was still going through that phase where it's really weird to think of your parents as kids.
Yes, I recall that. I remember that too.
It's just hard to imagine, your parents younger.
You love that I'm doing this book. I am really enjoying it, actually. And it's hard for me to keep it, down, leave the book down. And because I'm trying to do this, where I experience everything, like with you guys, because I haven't read it yet. I'm only reading once a week. So I'm, experiencing all that. So that's why you'll hear me giggle or go, wow, or oh my God. Like, that's why you'll hear me, because I've never read it. at all. So it's my actual expressions for the
your
first
reactions.
time it's my reactions for the first time reading this book, and I want to keep it that way. So I don't want to read it like I don't want to read behind the scenes. No, I'm going to actually do it with this whole book. Like just read a couple chapters every week. Yeah. I still got to pick out my next one. You guys got to give me ideas, and then we'll vote. I will not do Twilight. Please. No.
Oh, did someone really suggest that?
Yeah, I think Michelle did. I think Michelle did. Yeah, because she's like, I don't like the creepy stories, and I'm pretty sure she said Twilight. I'm like, hell no. And then switched it to another vampire, I think. I'm the same age as my father when my little sister was born. Oh, wow. Interesting how it was location and the people that were not the issue. I guess being told no was not what Charlie wanted. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not doing Twilight. Nah. I was thinking of maybe doing a novel for like a Canadian or something, true crime. But most of my audience is all US, so I can actually, like, I've already read all my things and stuff like that, so I can just stick to the US actually. Doesn't matter to me.
I will also say that, like, there are many YouTube videos that are made about my mother and also about the Manson family in general. One of them, and I'm not going to say who it is. I'm not going to bash them because they do a lot of true crime, and I watched. It was a long one, but she like did the full Manson family, and she did a really great job.
Oh, wow.
And I was actually pretty darn impressed on how much research I could tell was done in it. But they came to the conclusion that the whole motive thing was all because of drugs, and it had nothing to do with Helter Skelter. And that type of, it does, to me, like, it did a disservice almost to the victims. But I do want to point out that not only was Rise and Pig, which were part of, the Helter Skelter theories, but Helter Skelter itself was written in the victim's blood at the crime scene. And you have, he told too many people knew of this story, and his theories for it to not be true. There's every single one of them was talking about it. And so I do want to point out, when you do look up information and read about it, you do, you kind of need to pay attention to, I guess I want to say is consider the source, but even if it's a reliable, trusted source, just like your banner says underneath, come to your own conclusions.
Yes.
Don't, I guess what I could say is don't be a follower. don't just blindly list. But yeah, there are quite a few videos that I am seeing out there that is just, oh, it had to do with drugs. The victims, they did drugs at their house. They, and Manson knew that they, and they went there for drugs. And I just, I just think it's crap.
Yeah, there's too much involved. There's no way it was just drugs.
Yeah, and it somehow shifts some of the blame a little bit onto the victims and how they're saying it. And I just wanted to spit that out there, that the Helter Skelter motive, as crazy as it is and as nuts as you can tell as you've been reading about it, just because it is so completely far-fetched, sometimes that's true. A lot of stuff in history in general, not just this case, you can't make this shit up.
No, I agree.
That happens.
Yeah, that's the best way. That's why I always leave this banner on. Like, don't take whatever I say as fact. Most of the things I say, if it's fact, I'll tell you it's fact. If it's my opinion, I'll let you know too. But I keep that up just so people know. Like, I think most people will come to their own conclusion as well anyways. But it's nice to hear that, to know, there's no way in hell that was all because of drugs. They didn't help, but he had a motive. Definitely had a motive. Like, the freaking guy thinks he's Jesus Christ. He's a wackadoodle.
being quiet was a benefit to your mom, Artsy. I mean, because we have, aw, thanks, Nancy.
She's a sweetheart.
Yeah, I am very lucky to be alive. I can say that very true. Yeah. My mom almost died from this, not once, but twice.
I know, I can't wait to hear all of your stories. Yeah, I like the saltines with butter.
You should try it with ketchup.
Yep. No, my grandfather used to eat ketchup sandwiches. So it was literally 2 pieces of bread smacked together with ketchup in the middle. I was like, ew, why? Oh, I love my ketchup sandwich. Okay, good for you. Like, yuck.
I tell people, if you put ketchup on a hot dog and you have a bite left, but the hot dog's gone, and you just take it, it's just bread and ketchup. It's pretty much the same thing. It's just, crunchy. Crackers.
Yeah. Mm. And see, I'm picky with that. Not picky, but like if I'm eating a hot dog and it doesn't fill my bun and the rest is just bun and ketchup, I throw it out. I will. Yeah, music and driven ego. Oh, you almost fell asleep. Sometimes I read too fast. Sometimes I talk too fast. So if I do, just be like, hey, you, slow down. Sometimes I do, and I don't mean to, but sometimes I do. I talk fast, especially when I'm nervous.
Drugs or alcohol during pregnancy. That's very true. There was an interview that Roman Polanski had to go shortly after the murders and defend them because they were because they were instantly trying to find a reason, and the headlines at that time were going straight to saying that it was because of drugs.
Yeah.
Before Manson and everything was arrested, she wouldn't drink wine when she was pregnant. She wouldn't, none of that.
And she was offered, from what I recall, like through movies and stuff, they would always offer, and she's like, no. And they'd smoke joints and stuff and everything else. I don't even think she did that. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah, there was drugs involved, definitely, but just not with Sharon, yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of drugs throughout this case.
Oh, yeah.
But it wasn't the motive.
No, I couldn't believe that. I haven't even read the whole book, and there's no way. I just don't believe that for no, I just don't. He used that, definitely, to manipulate people and whatnot, but it wasn't, no, it just does that, no. That's just stupid. Well, if you guys don't have any questions or anything, I'm going to head off here and, as usual, go stuff my face. I don't know. It's like starts at 8 o'clock where I want a meal. It's weird. Like, not a huge one. I was thinking about making something real quick here.
It's still weird. Yeah, you're East Coast. I'm West Coast time, so I'm looking outside going, maybe I should still go mow my lawn, or if I should do it tomorrow. I still have sunshine.
Yeah, because I'm 8:45 right now. I don't know. I might go live tomorrow. My son is gone. He went to Newfoundland. He left at 5 a.m. He's not coming back till the 18th.
Tomorrow I might try and go live too. So maybe we'll tag team it. Let's go at different times.
Yeah, I'm not going to go. No, so I like to watch you too. So, and mine will probably be about KJ's bullcrap. So I'm, yeah, I'll probably just go live. I don't know when, to be honest, but I won't when you go live. I like to watch you as well. I'm jealous that you can paint like that. I wish I knew how.
I have no clue when I'm going, and it might even be. Well, I don't know if I can Saturday, so it might have to be tomorrow. I'll figure it out.
Sunflower? I love sunflowers.
I'm kind of leaning towards either a lotus or another hibiscus. But for the lotus, I think I'm going to try metallic paint. I don't know.
Well, that'd be cool.
Many, many options.
Yeah. Oh, if I had a passport, I'd probably go to the States, hang out with all you guys, and never come back. We can read. Oh, you did fall asleep, Teresa? I almost put Nancy to sleep too. I am so glad I can help. If I was KJ, I'd be like, oh, how dare you? You have to pay attention to me. Me.
Oh, goodness. You should come to the U.S., though. You need to taste huckleberries.
Ooh, I'd love to, honestly. I got to get my passport, and we should, because all you guys are in the States, and I'm in Canada. A lot of these people, like a lot of my subs are all in the States. I've got a few, though, that are Canadian, but of course they're far away from me. That might as well be in the States. So that sucks.
Any updates on what's going on with the Canadian, like, censoring videos on?
Nothing yet. Yeah, you just popped in. That's how I said I had some, Alberta. How'd it go? Everything okay? Come to Florida. I've actually wanted to go to Florida. I was supposed to go, but no. Nikki can't leave Canada. No. Apparently not. Oh, I was supposed to go with Mare. I'm so mad about that.
Truth is stranger than fiction. That's very true.
Mm-hmm. Usually
very true. So I was raised a little weird. I mean, not that, like, and I'm not saying that because my mother was in the Manson family, but I was raised with a lot of history. And that's one thing that this case too has kind of helped with. It's grown an interest in history from me. I was, you have like the normal like bedtime stories. My mom was a very hands-on mom. She did great.
Yeah.
As far as, volunteering at school, doing Girl Scouts, you name it, it was done. And she did it as a single parent. So working 2 jobs, I don't know how she did it. Yeah, I'm exhausted just thinking about it for her. But, a lot of my bedtime stories would actually be stories of history because my mother studied this. And then my grandmother was a librarian. So it was very much a book history family, I guess is the way to describe it. But yeah, history or truth is much stranger than anything you can possibly make up.
I agree. Melissa said your story is fascinating. I'm so glad you're sharing with us. Much respect. I know, me too. How are they going to censor my videos? Honestly, I think they will get to pick and choose which videos are good enough to be shown all over the world. And if I don't make the cut, I'm stuck here in Canada. That's it. The only Canadians can watch my stuff. I think it's so. How do they have the right to do that? There's a petition. You can write them. You can email them. You can write a letter. I posted it on my community tab. If anyone you guys want to help me out, I'd love it. Please and thank you. I didn't even know about it. Erin Lee showed me. She's like, you better check this out. And I did. And they want to censor us. I don't get it.
Is that the Canadian government, and that's for all?
Yeah.
All of Canada,
all of Canadian creators are going to be hidden basically to Canadian content. That's it. Only in Canada can you see it, and unless you're lucky to make the cut, then they'll show your stuff all over the world. But I don't think my stuff will make it. Mine's like, I don't know, like this. I love what I do, but I don't know what they're looking for, and I don't have that many subs. Do they want a lot of subs? I don't know.
Now, what determines the cut that you have to make?
They didn't say. They didn't say. Yeah. That's what I mean. I don't know if you have to have like 100,000 subs in order to be that special one to get to show, like, be viewed all over the world. Like, I'm a small channel, so I'm probably not even going to make it. Like, I don't know how that's even fair. How can you not see me from the States? That doesn't make sense. So that's why all of us Canadians creators and stuff, posting it constantly on our community tabs and whatnot so that people can sign the petition, they can call, they can write a letter. Everything helps. I already wrote a letter. I don't know. I don't think it will come up, Teresa. Not if I'm banned from the States, then no. It better not pass because I'm going to lose everything. Like, I love doing it. I love my channel. I love doing this stuff. Like, I finally found something that I think I'm good at. I don't want to lose it because I'll have just a handful of people watching me from Canada. No, I don't think it's right. I don't even know why they're doing it. I don't know what it's their business anyways. It does stop breathing. I wonder if I can get away with it if, well, no, she'd still have to view it on YouTube. Damn.
I was going to say, are they going by the IP addresses? Is there a way you can go around?
Probably. I would imagine they're going, assuming it's the size of your channel, how much money you're making them, or if you're consistent with videos, how much you upload. It's hard to say. What's it, Newfoundland? Oh, he just went on a trip with his aunt. It's not fair. Oh, thank you, Melissa. Yeah, exactly. They always stick their noses in where they don't belong. So if you guys don't mind, sign it, share the petition. I hope it doesn't go through. A lot of people are upset about it. If you read all the documents and stuff and what they're saying, they passed this bill and we're screwed. Like,
it's that part of like censorship and
yes, exactly.
I mean, and even down here in the States, they've burned books and they've, it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
It's a lot scary.
It is, yeah. Newfoundland is in Canada. There's ocean and there's whales and seals and dolphins and I'm so jealous. I didn't go though because it's his aunt from his father's side. So kind of weird. I mean, I probably could have, but I also wasn't invited at all. Trust me, I would have. It took me everything not to hop in Leland's suitcase. Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. They do it in the States. Check out Runkle of the Bailey. He's a Canadian lawyer who covered the debt. Charlie probably advised you. Oh, cool. Thanks. Actually, that's a good question, Melissa. If a Canadian and a U.S. citizen, did a podcast together, yeah, would it only be shown in Canada or both? That's a good question. No, I haven't talked to him yet. He left at 5 this morning. I'm a smother. He calls me a smother. Instead of a mother, I'm a smother. And I get it. So I'm going to leave him alone. Let him have his fun. I'm sure when he gets there, he'll be exhausted and he'll be out playing and doing whatever tomorrow. So I'll text him later at night. Runkle did a good job. We have to do that. Just see. Yeah. Trust me, I didn't want him going, especially on a plane. I have anxiety so bad. I just worry about everything, stupidity and everything else. All of us can be smothers. Yeah, I'm a smother. I'm a helicopter mom. He's all I have. He's my everything, But if I ever forbid him for going on this trip, like what a piece of crap would I be? I would never do that. He deserves to live. If you team up with us, have a channel, it should cover both countries. Yeah. Your son's name is Leland? Really? That's awesome. Yeah, I would think so. They would cover both. It's just stupid. All right, if you guys don't have any questions, I'm going to get my butt off of here and I'm going to make something to eat. I'm really hungry. I'm always hungry.
Yeah, and if anybody wanted to look my mom up,
yes.
It's Barbara Hoyt. That is my mother. Just know that when you Google, I have yet to found a website that was actually, I mean, some of it would have bits and pieces, but there's a lot of stuff on there that's just wrong. But
yeah,
it could help if you guys ever had questions from it. Some of it I might answer right away. Others I might save for. I have a couple that I'm already kind of saving towards the end.
Yeah.
Written down.
She meant U.S. not. Shut up, Teresa. No one asked you. Yeah, I know. I am too, D. Sick and tired of the government thinking they know what's best for us, but they can't get their own house of government together, right? Yeah, I'll go eat. I'll go stuff my face. I'm good at it. That's all I do. Eat, 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 eat.
You eat and you're skinny. And
I know. I know. I don't eat huge meals. I just kind of, I don't know, eat a little bit here and there. So it's like having about 4 meals a day, but small. I was too lazy to use capital letters. Don't judge me. Well, damn it. Next time, do it. I'm just kidding. All right, I'm going to shut up, go stuff my face after I make this. Thank you for coming on, Artsy. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
Hit a thumbs up, you guys. On the way out. Like,
yeah, do that. Do that. Do that. All right. You guys have a good night. Bye.
Bye.